7.4. Apply foundational security operations concepts. And again, I want to remind you that there's a lot of concepts that repeat across many tasks. And it's not a mistake. Security concepts are deeply interconnected, and the repetition reinforces what's important. So whether it's access control, segregation of duties, privileged account management, these principles work together. And before we get started, remember, if I don't go deep enough, use the prompt at the end. You should be an AI whisperer right by now, getting your assistant to do what you tell it to do, and that includes helping you pass this exam. So let's get started. All right, this task has 5 subtasks that include need to know least privilege, segregation of duties and responsibilities, privileged account management, job rotation, service level agreements. As you can see, again, we're touching on some very familiar security principles, but it's a foundational thing and it helps reinforce everything. So let's enjoy it. 7.4.1. Need to know, least privilege. These two concepts are among the cornerstones of effective security management and are likely to show up in multiple areas. First, need to know principle ensures that users only have access to the information necessary for their job roles. This limits potential accidental or malicious exposure of sensitive data. It's all about enforcing control so that no one has more access than they truly need. Least privilege then takes another step to make sure that users are granted the minimum level of access necessary to perform their function. This means their access rights should not exceed what's required for a specific responsibility. In practice, these principles are implemented using RBAC, Role-Based Access Control, which ties permissions to specific job roles within the organization. We employ regular access reviews to ensure the permissions stay aligned with the needs and revoke unnecessary rights. We may also use just-in-time access, a powerful tool that grants limited permissions, reducing the window of risk from elevated access. These principles are key to reducing both insider threats and external breaches, making them critical not only for your organization, but for passing the exam. 7.4.2. Segregation of duties and responsibilities. The concept of segregation of duties is about preventing conflicts of interest and to reduce the risk of errors and fraud. Essentially, it ensures that no single individual has too much control over a critical process. By separating responsibilities, you create a system of checks and balances. For example, the person who authorizes a transaction should not be the same person who records it. In practice, this is achieved through clear role separation and access control mechanisms. These mechanisms ensure that critical tasks are divided among different individuals, reducing the risk of insider threats or errors that go undetected. Another key part of this is policy enforcement. Formal SOD policies should be developed to define exactly which duties need to be separated. Continuous auditing and monitoring of these policies is essential to ensure compliance and to catch any potential issues before they become security risks. Segregation of duties is not just about preventing fraud or mistakes. It's about maintaining trust and transparency in your processes, and a key requirement for the exam. 7.4.3. Privileged account management. This is a critical component of access control that often appears on the exam. Privileged accounts are powerful tools in any organization, but also come with significant risks. This is why they need to be tightly controlled. A privileged access management or PAM solution is used to centralize the control and monitoring of these accounts. By doing so, we can ensure that elevated access is only granted for those who absolutely need it, and that it's managed securely. One of the key practices of PAM is enforcing multi-factor authentication. This adds an extra layer of security to privileged accounts, requiring users to provide more than just passwords to gain access. You'll see questions on MFA, that's for sure. Another important aspect is monitoring and auditing of privileged activities. It helps you keep an eye on everything done by the privileged users, and it allows you to detect any suspicious activities in real time. Continuous auditing is critical to ensure that privileged accounts are not abused. And additionally, just-in-time access can be enforced to grant privileges permissions only when absolutely necessary for a limited time. This helps reduce the risk associated with prolonged elevated access, and a key component in your day-to-day work, not just on the exam. Remember, PAM is not just about technology. It's about policy and procedure. 7.4.4 Job rotation. It's an interesting one because it serves multiple purposes within the organization. It's a great example of how security practices can enhance not just security, but overall organizational resilience, a concept you may see on the exam. First of all, job rotation acts as a detective control. By rotating employees between roles, you introduce fresh eyes into different processes, which can help identify irregularities, errors, or even misconduct that might go unnoticed. This increases accountability as well, since employees know their work will eventually be reviewed by somebody else. Job rotation is also a deterrent against fraud and misconduct. Knowing that somebody else will take over their role can discourage employees from engaging in unethical behavior. This ties into the overall concept of reducing insider threats, as we've seen in previous subtasks. But it's not just about that confidentiality of security. Job rotation promotes cross-training and skill diversification, which can enhance organizational flexibility and availability. In today's fast-changing world, having employees who are knowledgeable about multiple roles makes the organization more resilient and adaptable. And lastly, job rotation can lead to process improvement. Fresh perspectives often bring new insights into how things could be done better or more efficiently. These aren't just theoretical benefits. They will directly affect your ability to pass the exam, so pay attention. 7.4.5 Service level agreements. It's the contract between the service provider and the customer that defines performance metrics and security expectations. To meet the needs of both parties, the SLA must include clear performance metrics, such as uptime and response time. These metrics are measurable, which helps ensure accountability. But performance isn't the only thing that matters in an SLA. Security requirements must be integrated into the agreement as well. This can include incident response times, data protection measures, and compliance with specific regulatory frameworks. SLA should also have penalties and remediation clauses in place. These clauses define what happens if the server provider fails to meet the agreed upon standards. This could include financial penalties or other compensatory measures, which ensure that the provider is held accountable. A best practice is to conduct regular reviews and updates of the SLA. As technology and business needs evolve, so should the terms of the agreement. This ensures the SLA stays relevant and continues to provide the necessary protection over time. In the real world, SLAs are your contract to ensure your service providers meet both business and security requirements. All right, wrapping up Task 7.4, apply foundational security operation concepts. We talked about some core components to this that I would be familiar with before the exam. Need to know, least privilege, enforce role-based access control, RBAC, to ensure users have only the access to what's necessary for their job functions. Segregation of duties, ensure that no single individual has control over conflicting tasks by clearly separating responsibilities, reducing the risk of fraud and other insider threats. Privileged account management, implement PAM solutions to control, monitor, and audit privileged accounts, ensuring they're secured with multi-factor authentication and just-in-time access. Job rotation, rotate staff to promote cross-training, increased accountability, and to deter fraud by introducing fresh perspectives into critical roles. And service level agreements. We should establish and monitor our SLAs that clearly define performance and security requirements, ensuring service providers meet agreed upon standards. As you can see, these principles are interconnected, whether we're talking about access control, auditing, or risk management. Together, they form a holistic approach to security operations. So let's try and test our knowledge with the prompt on the next slide. All right, you know what to do. Play with it, have fun. The most important thing, right? Get familiar. You know what's really cool too? So like when you notice there's a couple of times when they'll wander, they'll stray. But when you can notice which LLM goes in a certain direction. So I like to say with Gemini, it will often forget in our prompt, for instance, to wait for the next question. It's like the first thing to go in Gemini for some reason. And you go, wait a minute, you were supposed to wait for my reply. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. You did say that. So I like to say part of AI whispering is not just knowing how to talk to these things, but even recognizing the signature of each AI and go, let me guess, not only did AI write that for you, that's Gemini said that, right? Yeah, recognize his accent. All right, see you in 7.5.